Time for the 49ers Rush Podcast. And here's your host, John Chapman.
What is going on, faithful? It is a great 49ers day because I got this guy next to me. Oh, it's mirrored. I got to point the other way. JonnyDel, the man, the myth, the legend, as good of a content creator that exists for anybody. How are you doing today, Johnny?
Man, I was about to say fantastic, but as like I told you before the show, I spent this morning with my CPA doing taxes. And they say the only things that are certain in life are death and taxes. And it was as fun as a colonoscopy. So, we're walking a little side to side today, but we're doing good.
Well, I'm hoping that this will be a little bit of a reprieve and we could just have an absolute blast because, man, I've got a fun one today. We're going to upset some people. We got Johnny on the show, so we got to talk some scheme and some X's and O's, which is going to be fun. Obviously, some draft stuff. But real quick before we get to that, I love all the hashtag CCs. Last week, without even me paying attention, I didn't even know it, we hit episode 800. And I didn't even know it. We passed it without noticing. And so we got to do a giveaway. So we are going to be giving away an autographed Deebo Samuel jersey. That is what's up to all the hashtag CCs. Now, there's multiple ways to enter. If you're a Patreon supporter, automatically entered. On Twitter, we put it out there. It's my pinned tweet. You can retweet that. Another entry. You can hashtag CC. That's an entry. We are going to be announcing the winner live on our Monday show. So win a free Deebo jersey. Why not, man? It's autographed. Have a good time. Just an extra way to say thank you for all the support over the years. When this draft hits, man, this will be my 8th year doing this crazy show where we just talk football and have a good time, man. And I'm thankful again, Johnny. I appreciate you being here. And so real quick, if somebody didn't know who Johnny is, okay, this dude's the X and O's machine. I'm a film guy. This guy's an X and O scheme guy. So, Johnny, walk us through just a little bit of what you're working on, some of your last recent episodes, and where they can find you and support you.
So they can find me on YouTube at JonnyDel's Football Academy. You can just Google it. If you're saying, man, I'm not sure where I can find it, you can just Google JonnyDel's Football Academy or just JonnyDel, and it'll take you. First thing that pops up is the YouTube channel. You can find me on Twitter at JonnyDel's. Again, also check out Twitter for JonnyDel's Football Academy. That's where I'm at. And what they're going to see. So during the offseason right now, man, I'll tell you, near the end of the season, it was rough, man. As you know, content was coming fast and quick, and we were grinding. And so I was taking a little bit of a mental break for a few weeks, trying to just rest and recover. I've lost like 5 pounds. I'm glad I've had some more time to be a little healthier. And but so right now we're working on. I'm working on a series on the Shanahan offense. So I'm going to be doing a series of just kind of an introduction for fans who, sometimes as we're going through the season, I do a lot of review breakdowns and we move a little bit quick through some of the concepts and some of the plays and things. And we're going to dive into a little bit of detail on, what this concept is. Deb's a great supporter. I know she supports your channel. She's been on my channel there, supports it. I love the support. But we're going to just look at, okay, if you want to know what a wide zone is, we're going to talk about the wide zone. And I may even, get my Alex Gibbs wide zone. If you've ever heard Alex Gibbs talks, he's got it. That he is a Mississippi boy. And we'll talk about things like a speedo concept, the pin concept, things like this, just passing concepts that are staples of the Shanahan offense. We'll go one by one through them through the off season. And then we're doing the podcast, myself and Adam Marino. You were gracious enough to come on and bring your presence and the great John Chapman aura onto our channel. And we had a great time. We're doing our podcast. We're trying to get a show out Mondays and Thursdays or Fridays. been a little under the weather the last 10 days, so I wasn't able to put out a show at the beginning of at the end of last week. So yeah, I almost had no voice. Like the pollen in the
under the
south
weather
is
and taxes. Are you just like a glutton for punishment, man?
pretty much, yeah. I mean, it was rough. I was just like, yeah, the universe is coming after me. But no, I almost had no voice. I'm like, I can't really. As you know, it's a little hard to talk when that happens. So, but other than that, that's where the people can find me. And thank you for bringing me on your show. I always appreciate the opportunity that somebody allows to borrow your audience for a little bit of time.
It's awesome. And in the description of this video, it's the very first line, whether you're listening, watching, downloading, the link is right there. It's simple. And then once you do go subscribe, I need you to do just like Jason did and post it, man. The community is all about growing. There's enough room for everybody. And so anybody that he gets as a subscriber, the fan base gets more knowledgeable. The more knowledgeable you are, the funner you're going to have on game days. And that's what we're here for. Now, let's jump into this. I got to give a shout out to my man, Brian White. He did a heck of a job, and he emailed me this concept. In my email box right now, my DMs, it's all, should we trade this guy? What could we get for this player? And okay, I'm just going to be very, very honest. I'm like an old hat in the fact that I'm like, nope, keep everybody. You draft, bring a couple free agents. That's it. Like, I'm vanilla. If I go to the ice cream shop, my family gets all the crazy stuff. I get vanilla. I just want vanilla ice cream. I'm simple. So Johnny's going to be the bad guy today. Okay. Actually, I am. We did a little bit of this with Wayne earlier in the week, but I went through all my messages and I just wrote down every single player that's been mentioned to me that should we trade this? What could we get for this player? Johnny's going to be the GM, John Lynch. I'm going to be opposing teams trying to acquire some of these 49ers players. Johnny, how do you feel about this? I didn't give him a heads up on these players, by the way. He doesn't.
He didn't, and I'm excited for it. I'm ready to see if we can fire off some John Lynch Hall of Fame shots. You know, he was a heavy hitter, so we're gonna swing back.
So, and again, the whole purpose of this isn't because I think these players should be traded. It's to provide context. Every single team puts out feelers. And again, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have said repeatedly, we'll listen on any player. Nobody's off limits because you might get one of those home run offers. And so let's start it off. Rumors have been swirling about Brandon Ayuk. One, he's in his 5th-year deal, about to get a new long-term deal if you keep him, which is what I want to happen. But rumors have come out that several teams, 3 in fact, have reached out to the 49ers about Brandon Ayuk. And the 49ers have said, we're not interested. But let's simulate one of those calls, okay? Let's just pretend I'm an AFC team. I call you. What's it going to take for me, Johnny, to get Brandon Ayuk off your hands? You're a running team. You don't use them near as much as we would. We run 4 wide. We want him. What do we got to do, Johnny? What do you want? You name your price. Let's do this.
I don't think you're going to want to pay my price because here's the deal. I know that you are going to have to give up draft capital and a contract. And are you going to do both at the high level that Brandon Ayuk deserves? Because Brandon Ayuk is a key player on our team. Brandon Ayuk is a huge element of our running game. He is our top man-beating receiver. He's our X-receiver, which we do not have another one on the team. So what I'm going to ask for is I'm going to ask for a first-round pick, and I don't think you're going to be willing to do that.
Ooh, so you're talking late first. That's what Josh threw up in the chat as well. Uh-oh, the chat's freezing over here. Hopefully I'm not. There we go. So, okay, fine. I'm going to give you the 22nd overall pick. You let me worry about the contract. Will you take the number 22nd pick in this year's draft for Brandon Ayuk? Just straight up, man. Let's make it this easy. Let's just make this deal, buddy.
No, look, you know as well as I do, there's a reason why you're coming to me for a trade at wide receiver for Brandon Ayuk. And there's a reason why you're willing to give up the 22nd overall pick in this draft, because we all know that the top end talent is not there in this draft in the wide receiver class. So here's what you have to give me.
Either. I really don't like
it. Yeah. Our scouts have been working their tails off. They know that this is a draft that we are not going to find a Brandon Ayuk in, and you know that. And so I'm going to ask for a first and a conditional third. So, if you're willing to make something like that happen, maybe we can talk. But that's what I'm looking for.
Is there a spot where if that first round pick crept up to a certain number, like 15 or 12, where you're like, I'm down with this?
Yes. I mean, now realistically, if I'm really thinking about this trade, I don't see Brandon Ayuk getting anywhere close to that high.
I don't either.
When you look at the landscape of the NFL, I just don't see a receiver with the production that Ayuk has had. And I love Brandon Ayuk. I think he's a fantastic receiver. I just don't see him drawing the value that we would need to get back to actually really let him go. Like we just talked about. I'm not high on this wide receiver class.
At all.
And I don't think, and many of them, the better it's. I will say it's not devoid of talent, but I think it's really stocked with a lot of like late second round talent. That's what I feel like, that there's a number of guys that you could really put in that late second round. But as far as guys that fit what the 49ers like from receivers, which is physical receivers, thick receivers, I don't see that talent there. And so I just don't see a pathway to actually get better by trading Brandon Ayuk.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Big Papa says BA's value to us is probably greater than it would be to other teams. And you have to remember, the Niners developed that, the whole doghouse thing and forcing him to get into run blocking to where his persona changed. Fred Warner, I refer to him as Frankenstein. Fred Warner turned that dude into a monster, and now he's fighting people like freaking Juwan Jennings out there, which I love. So I want BA around here. I don't want him going in again. Whenever I say these things, I'm being devil's advocate. Having said that, okay, let's flip to the defensive side. Let's do a back-end roster guy. Again, this is not me saying we should trade him. Ambry Thomas. League needs corners. This dude he started in the NFC Championship game. He did the whole playoff run. You benched him. You didn't give him any looks. So we could use him. What if I sent you a 7th round pick for Ambry Thomas? He's on the back end of your roster anyway.
Well, here's the deal. As we've seen, the reason why Ambry Thomas was starting in that NFC Championship game is that we have needed a depth of corners. And look, Ambry is a kid that we believe a lot in. We think a lot of, and he's been working his tail off. He's we don't think that he declined at all. We just we think that Diamador Lenore Demo really shot up there on the depth chart and just overtook him. That doesn't mean we believe any less in Ambry Thomas. So we're not going to be giving him away for anything less than we got him for. Ooh. So that's
you got him in the 5th. Is that correct? Or no, you got him with your comp pick. That was a 3rd round comp pick.
Right.
Let's meet in the middle, okay? And I want everybody to answer this. You're going to write one of two things: Ambry or a 6th round pick. We'll do middle of the 6th round. That's the best I got for you. Ambry or a 6th. Final offer. Talk to me, Johnny. Let's make this deal, baby.
If you're picking above us in the 3rd, I might do it with Ambry, 6th, and swapping 3rds.
Ooh, that's sexy. Look at you. Look at you.
I might do that.
No on the 6th.
And here's the reason why. Just pulling back from being John Lynch, from JonnyDel. There's a kid. I think he's going to be there at the early 3rd, safety, Sidney Brown. If that was the pick that got you Sidney Brown, I'd take it in a heartbeat.
I'm a pretty big Sidney Brown fan myself. I just channeled my William Dafoe American Psycho. I'm a little bit of a scientist myself. I really like Sidney Brown. I didn't like his measurables near as much as I thought, but my athletic comp for him was Dante Whitner. That was before the combine. The testing seemed to prove that 4.47 speed. He's that 5'10", 211. He's thicker, dude. I like him a lot. I think he's going in the 2nd round. You think that he could possibly fall to the third round?
I think, up until he ran sub 4.5, I did. At 4.47, I think it will be hard to get him. And here's another reason I swapped that pick, because we have so many 3rd round picks that now gives you enough ammo to maybe move up into the 2nd to get Sidney Brown. That's what I'm looking at. Is do you get more draft capital for a guy that, like you say, is on the back end of the roster, but now allows you to move up and pick a Sidney Brown. The comp I had for Sidney Brown was Talanoa Hufanga. Just the way who he reminds me of when he moves. I saw him in person at the Senior Bowl, and he was, as far as defensive backs for the national team, impressed me more than anybody else. And when you see him on the back end, you don't notice him because he was always in the right spot, and that's a big deal. And so, yeah, that is the only reason I might move on from Ambry Thomas. Other than that, I really actually do like Ambry Thomas, and I think the team would be more than happy to keep him on the roster and would feel okay with him starting. Now, there are questions of when we had guys go down. Samuel Womack was going in outside over Thomas. I think there may be a little bit more going on there than what they're admitting. But I'd move Thomas if I had a chance to get Sidney Brown in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's easy to have these conversations and talk like fifth, sixth, whatever. But whenever you put a tangible player at that value, it totally just brings more color to the discussion to help you understand, like, this is what the difference is. And I think that's a big one. And so I don't know what's going to happen with Ambry this year. I really, really don't. But I can remember when the 49ers had zero corner depth and how that just destroyed games. Just destroyed games. So I'm totally with that. And these are all players that I've got emails on. I'm not creating these out of my own or whatever. All right, here we go. Let's talk about our backup running back, Elijah Mitchell. Lots of injuries, but whenever he plays, he's great. You've got a guy, he's the number 2. He could be our number 1. You drafted him late. You could get back what you drafted for him. So if I offer you a 6th-round pick for Elijah Mitchell, what say you, Johnny?
I say no. I say I'm going to look for at least a 3rd. Because we love running backs in the 3rd, and I don't think you're going to be willing to pay a 3rd for a guy who was injured all of last year. One, we get the value of a guy that we know can be a number 1 back if he's able to be in there at a cheap contract. That contract is worth a lot. He's a very affordable contract, and so we're going to need some serious value to move on from him. And we really love the idea of what we can do when we put him and Christian McCaffrey on the field at the same time. And so we love our running back room and don't really want to change it.
That sounds exactly like what they would say. We're really happy with our running back room. We're really happy with these running backs. And
I'm trying to channel that John Lynch.
I'm feeling it, man. I'm feeling it. Now, one of the things you said is talking about the cap. We mentioned briefly right before we went live, you're seeing across the NFL just people just dumping contracts because the NFL is at this weird spot where teams don't have enough money to pay all of these solid contributing starters. Johnny, explain to us why the NFL is kind of dumping all these contracts now and why this is different than most years.
So we have to remember that the CBA was renegotiated right before 2020, right? So what that meant, there was an extra clause in there in the CBA that teams were going, that what teams were doing was they were trying to get under a certain amount before the CBA renewed, because then they got extra carryover down the road. And so, and it also meant they had to meet certain spending requirements and things. So what you ended up having was a lot of teams were backloading contracts in 2019. And that was taking effect in 20, 21, 22. And the big one was 23. People love to backload that 4th year of a contract. And that's where that bill is coming due for a lot of teams. And then compound that with, then you had the COVID year of 2020 where the cap tanked. And then the league said, we're going to spread the losses out over 3 years. And to even get under the cap in 2020, you had teams converting base salary to bonuses and kicking that cap down the road. And it's just compounded and compounded. I think 23 has been the year that you're really seeing that bill come due for a huge chunk of teams, the Saints being one. You look at the Saints;
They've been the most egregious. Them and the Rams have been the most egregious.
Oh,
cap.
it's insane. They're still right now like 24 million over the cap, and they backloaded the crap out of Derek Carr's contract. I didn't realize how much they backloaded it until I looked at it. Because I'd heard he got signed, and I was like, how did they afford him? Looked at the contract, and it was like way back.
Kick that can, baby.
Yeah,
kicking it.
they're going to end up adding a couple void years to his contract at some point just to try and spread that out to like 2030. And they still are going to have to do maneuvering just to get under the cap this year. And you look at, there's like 10 teams that are over the cap right now. And so that's what you're seeing is shedding these big contracts, these backloaded contracts when guys are in their third and fourth years, the big base salaries are due, and they're shedding the contracts to try and get under. It's either a way that they say, well, this is our way of renegotiating with you in public, or we believe that there's going to be enough free agents out there where the value is going to drop. I think what you're going to see is the top tier guys will get those record-setting deals. When they want to be, I want to be the new highest paid player in the league at this position.
The JonnyDels of free agency. They're cashing in, baby. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh no. Yeah, I mean, you're like a Nick Bosa. Okay, Nick Bosa might reset the edge market. Okay, you're going to see something like that. But I think where you're really going to see the market not keep up is in the mid-tier guys, because there's going to be so much competition as you're seeing. That free agent list is growing and growing and growing. If you're looking for like a mid-tier edge guy, there's like 10 names out there right now that are decent names. You're looking at like a Jadeveon Clowney, you're looking at a Robert Quinn, you're looking at a Samson Ebukam, you're looking at Dante Fowler Jr., you're looking at a Yannick Ngakoue. Okay, you have a bunch of these guys there that I think are going to be those mid-tier guys that are going to draw interest, but they're not going to be drawing that $15 million a year because the teams just don't have the cap, and there's not enough teams that have that room. So I think you're going to see a lower kind of mid-tier contracts situation going. I predict this happening last year, and I missed it a little bit because I didn't expect so many teams to end up kicking the can down the road another year. But I think that's what teams are doing right now is they're going to kick the can down the road, and this is the year that you're going to see more of those mid-level contracts not inflate. They're going to stay a little bit lower. I don't know if you've looked at the safety class alone. There's a bunch of like safeties where their name, who they are, that are out there, which is just kind of crazy to think because of how valuable safeties are.
And I think, one, just to give an example of teams pushing back their cap numbers, if we just look at Trent Williams, whenever he got his deal done in 2021, listen to these cap hits. First year, $8 million, 2022, $9 million, this year, 27, right? So everybody knew that the cap would jump up after that COVID year because of the loss of revenue. I don't think it jumped up as much as everybody hoped, but eventually it's the American way, baby. You just push those payments in the future. We'll deal with those later. And, you're talking about the safety market. I think this is key. We got news today that Tayshaun Gibson is one coming back. The 49ers have expressed interest. And 3, he is going to test the free agent market, which tells me one thing. Niners said, we want you. Here's what we can pay you. You might be able to get more elsewhere. If you want to go check that, that's cool with me. We also had Jimmy Ward walk back his stance on doing free agency. So I think I think everybody's realizing like, holy crap, you're going to pay me what? I led the team in interceptions. I had the most snaps for your entire defense. I'm Tayshaun Gibson, baby. You're going to offer me $4 million a year? Look at this safety class. We could draft somebody in the 3rd round that we really, really like.
Right.
I
think I think with a guy like Gibson, the 49ers are looking at the landscape of who's out there for free agency and who's out there in the draft, and they're feeling good. And remember, they also got Tarvarius Moore, who I'm not hugely high on. I was higher on him when he was younger.
He's a free agent now, though.
Yeah, I think they're going to bring him back for cheap, though.
Yeah,
I do. He's a good special teams guy. I know that's not the sexy thing to talk about. People are like, it's bringing a player free agency, special teams. But he's got the speed to go cover on special teams. But I think the 49ers are looking at it and they're saying, we're not going to overpay for a guy that, while we believe in you, you've really had one really good year of production. And he's on that age tipping point. I mean, you just look at some of the names that are out there. You got Jimmy Ward, they believe in him playing nickel or safety. You got Von Bell's out there. You got Adrian Amos is out there. You got Jordan Poyer's out there. You got Jesse Bates is the big name out there. I don't think we go after him. And then there's a bunch of other names of guys that have been starters in the league, like Jonathan Abram out of Seattle. You got a few other guys out there that just are in that I don't see, them wanting to pay $4 or $5 million to Tayshaun Gibson if they think they can get, an Amos at 3. I don't know if Amos comes at 3, but how many teams are going to be out there wanting to pay so many of these safeties $6-7 million when, only 10 teams in the league even have the cap space to sign these guys, and 6 of them have a safety already. So it's just it becomes interesting of I think they're looking around the league. I think why you're seeing Jimmy Ward maybe walk some of that back is he's starting to realize that the market will not be as flush as he was hoping, because like we said, you're seeing more contracts get dumped. You're seeing more players are getting ready to hit free agency. I think players were thinking that more of these guys were going to get retained by their teams, and they're not. And they're not liking what the teams are offering. And so they're going, I'll test free agency. And then, wait a minute. There's a lot more guys at my position out there. Maybe I don't want to test free agency. And I think as the free agency is coming for the first time in a while, players are losing leverage the closer we get to free agency.
Yeah, it's getting bad. Dr. Steve Brule, I love it, says Christopher Smith is more of a coverage guy, but I like him if he could add some more weight. That's the Georgia's safety. Now, I do have him 3rd round grade, 5'11", 192, a little bit slower, ran a 4.6, 240. But, man, he's a beast. Just a really solid defender on the backside of that Georgia defense. That was great. And, again, just another example, another testament to there's a lot of guys at this safety position. It's deep. And so 49ers haven't spent at that position financially outside of Jimmy Ward. But, again, the previous regime drafted both Tart and Ward. They haven't spent that much on this position. So I don't expect them to start doing that now. It just doesn't make sense to me. Now, real quick question I want to clear up. Dante, he says, the ticker scrolling on the bottom shows 11 picks. I thought the Niners had 10. You're not wrong. It's not finalized. This is based off of OTCs on the over the cap, their compensation formula. So the NFL has not officially awarded. The Niners probably are going to get 10, but they could get 11. So the one that would be off is that very last 7th round pick. So if it's going to be 10 or 11, but it depends on how the formula with playing time, the amount average per year, and postseason awards. That's the formula that goes into those things. So you're not wrong. Probably going to be closer to 10, but that's kind of where that's at. So anyway, throw that out there. Now, here we go. Let's talk about this. We got to talk some scheme. You're here, man. You teach us your ways, my friend. What do you see the biggest difference for this 49ers defense on the back end, changing from defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans to Wilks? What are you seeing differently on the coverage side? Are we going to do more single high, more cover 3? What do you think's in store?
So when you look at Wilks and Ryans, very similar coverage structure. They both like to play a lot of zone. They both will run a matching type of zone where they're going to protect the seams. Okay. So they protect the seams. They use the will to cover the number 3 coming across on a deep over, which is one way that teams will attack cover 3. We do this all the time. You maybe run play action. You'll clear out one side of the field. And if I'm not wigging my camera out too much with all my hand moving, I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands and it wigs out my camera. But then you have a deep over that comes over the top. What we like to do is use a linebacker to match that route. Okay. We don't task any of the flat player on that side with matching that. It allows us to do that. Wilks does the same thing. Because cover 4 plays very similar. He runs a lot of palms coverage, which we do, or some people call it 2 read. It's a cover 4 that can convert to cover 2 based upon the read of the number or the release of the number 2 receiver. Coverage structure is very similar. Now, where they differ is in how often they'll do certain things. So you will see a little bit less just cover 3 zone. DeMeco Ryans love to play cover 3 zone on base downs, especially against any sort of run personnel. And oftentimes, if teams were ever in a condensed formation of any kind, it was going to be cover 3. He was going to protect against the run, that way bring it down. If they spread out, usually you rarely saw us in a single high versus spread out. And that's usually, I'm assuming that Ryans was calling a couple plays in the huddle. If they spread out, we're going to do this. If they're condensed, we're going to do that as part of the game plan. With Wilkes, you're going to see probably a little more single high early base downs, and then you're going to see a lot more pressure. Wilkes blitzed about 4 times as much as Ryans did. Ryans love to play 7-man coverage and just bring 4. When he would blitz, though, they were really well-designed blitzes to bring a free rusher. Wilkes's blitz packages are a little bit different, different flavor. They accomplish similar things. Ryans love to, you'd always see Fred Warner come up and stand over the center, right? We saw that all the time. Okay. And that was that the center had to honor that, or sometimes he'd stand right over, head up over a guard. And we would present everything just as it was pre-snap to make sure we were actually it was almost like you're making it really easy for the offensive line to see these are all the potential rushers. You're not trying to confuse. You're just saying you have to account for all of these people because they all could rush. So we're going to sit here and now we know who's got what. And so if we drop this guy out, we know this guy is going to be blocking grass. Okay. So then we would do things outside of that. Where Wilkes will be a little bit different is he will adjust the rushing based upon the slide of the line. So he'll bring like 2 linebackers, sugar the A gaps, or they'll be on either side of the center. And then wherever the center slides to, that linebacker will drop back. So it's if the center slides to the left, then that linebacker, he drops into coverage and the other guy comes. If he slides to the right, vice versa. Okay. I saw that a bunch on film, that it was a blitz package he really liked. And what that does is that makes it so that center is not going to be able to help anybody. He's going to be blocking grass. And so that allows them to he likes to bring 5 a lot. He rarely brought 6 solo, or I said solo. Ryans brought 6 a little bit more than Wilkes did. Wilkes loves to bring 5, and he runs a lot of it's either man or fire zone behind it. So I think you're going to see more of that.
I think a fire zone is kind of going to be our thing, which I like. I don't know if we're going to be switching very much to a man concept or as many man concepts. Now, we were the most zone heavy team in the NFL last year. Do you think that's going to continue? Do you think that we'll still be the most zone dominant team?
I think it depends on what Ryans does down there in Houston.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So
I see what you're saying.
If Ryans runs the same defense that we ran down there, we will not be the most zone heavy team. The Texans will be. But I don't see us going much far away from man, just because our corners, our linebackers are so good in zone. They're very, very good in zone and in the coverage structure of zones that we have. When you have guys like Greenlaw and Warner and Hufanga who can be in the box, both stop the run, and you feel okay with them matching certain receivers, there's very few teams that have this personnel to match receivers with linebackers and your box safety. That gives you a lot of options to force quarterbacks to think post snap, because they're trying to figure out who's going to be the guy that matches this certain route. And they've got to be able, so they've got to bounce their eyes in a number of places. When you do that, that slows down the quarterbacks, that allows your pass rush to get there. So I think when Kyle talks about he wants to keep the scheme the same, I think that's what you're going to see now. I do believe you will see more pressure, but it's going to be more of these fire zones. Instead, we would do these kind of matching. It was technically considered a zone, but it uses man match principles. So it's a zone with man match principles. We would do a lot of times when we blitzed with Ryans, where like Fred Warner's dropping back into a zone, but he's going to pick up the number 3. Yeah. So that's where it is. So yes, he's dropping into a zone, but he's man matching the number 3. So that I don't think you'll see quite as much.
I like it. Corey, I want to say thank you for the super chat. And, this is something else that I get quite often. He says, I'm kind of star jaded, lost interest in the draft and free agency. How much better can this team really get? Quarterback seems to be all that matters at this point. Thank you, Corey, for your contribution and supporting the show. It means a lot. He's got a fair point, especially with the way in which the 49ers redshirt the majority of their picks and all that kind of stuff. And the foundation is built. But I would argue, man, if you just look at new impact starters from last year, Spencer Burford, Aaron Banks, traded for CMC, you could throw him in there. But defensive side, good gosh, Talanoa Hufanga, like he was a new guy. Diamador Lenore, Tayshaun Gibson, moving Jimmy Ward down. Like there's still going to be, who are those splash players? And so I do think that this team can get better. I know people want to talk about how the window is this year and next year. I'm sorry, I don't buy into that. Maybe it's more open and it's easy to see that it's open now. But in your opinion, Johnny, the way that they've built with homegrown talent, I feel like this is a little bit more sustainable than trading draft picks for these super high price free agents, what the Niners really haven't done.
I think you're 100% right. That, we're a team that we have lots of talent and we've acquired it in a lot of different ways. And, we're the Patriots if the Patriots didn't have Tom Brady, right? The Patriots, people assume just because they have Tom Brady, that's why they won all their Super Bowls. No, they were a deep, talented team, and they didn't do it in the flashy way all the time. They didn't, go in and go out and sign all these big-time free agents or trade all these picks. They were, known for – it was, guaranteed. When the Patriots came around at the 31st pick in the draft, 32nd pick in the draft, they were going to trade back. And pick up more picks and pick up these role player guys. We have followed that model really well and have built a very deep, both depth and width team that is stout. And it's like, he made a good point that quarterback seems like the only thing that matters, because it's felt like that's been the position that we just cannot get even consistency at, or any sort of solidity at. So, I think the way that they've gone about building this team, they've gone about developing coaches, developing front office personnel, that this organization does everything right. We have just not been able to get over that hump. But when you do everything right, you're going to be competitive for a long time. Now you throw if you find that answer at quarterback, which they hope they have on the team already. That's why I'm not really interested in a lot of the names thrown out there. Is like, well, no, let's look at Brock Purdy or Trey Lance. One of our best scenarios, one of those two being the guy, and then we're ready. We're good to go for a long time. So I think they're built the right way to keep competing year after year.
Yeah, David, shout out to David R. He sent me an email this week, and he basically said this. He said, I heard the national media, they were talking about how the Eagles built this entire homegrown roster, and they developed their own guys, drafted their own guys, and all that stuff. And he asked, where do the 49ers fit with the Eagles as far as starters? So I went through and I counted both squads up. The Eagles, man, impressive. 14 of their 22 starters, they drafted themselves. That's an anomaly in today's NFL. So I went through the 49ers. 16. They have 8 offensive starters they drafted, 8 defensive starters they drafted. So 16 out of 22. This is it's a building stepping block that continues to go. And you talked about the quarterback position. The window's open. And if that quarterback position could just be, it doesn't have to be top 5, right? But if it could be top 10 throughout the entire process, it's going to be a Super Bowl. And you just it's got that keep chopping mentality. And you've got these 2 cats in there now, Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. And man, if one of those guys just pans out, I feel like Brock Purdy set the floor pretty damn high. And that's not a bad thing. What are your thoughts as far as, again, the Brock Purdy surgeries tomorrow? We're recording this Thursday. What are your thoughts just on Trey Lance? Because we know he's healthy now. We know he's working out now, all those things. What's the number one thing you want to see from him during this offseason progression, OTAs, mini camps, all that stuff? What is it that you're looking for progress-wise, Trey Lance, just during this offseason? What do we need to see?
What I want to see is efficiency in the short passing game. I think people assume that the deep ball came in more with Trey Lance because that's what Shanahan wants out of the offense. I think he came in more because that's a strength of Trey Lance, and he doesn't have the short game passing efficiency that we've had with Jimmy G or that we ended up seeing with Brock Purdy. If he adds that to his game, that will be huge, and that will help the running game that they're adding with him, because that's where that really starts to stress the defense. When you have weak side linebackers who have to choose, and this is what we saw with Philadelphia's offense. When you have weak side linebackers who have to choose between helping on the run with the quarterback or the running back, or covering in that short, quick area where Brandon Ayuk loves to live, where Deebo Samuel loves to live, where George Kittle loves to live, that really starts to stress the defense. And that's what then allows that big arm to open up down the field. So I want to see decisiveness in that, anticipation on his throws, understanding how to manipulate zone coverages. These are all things, though, that I think I'm not expecting a huge jump from now until week 1. I want to see progression. I think where you really see that is if he's able to start games 1 through games 10, you start to see these things move. Because we got to remember, Brock Purdy looked as polished he was because he had 40 more starts in college than Trey Lance. So, he's got a lot of games that he has not played, that he's just got to play. And I want to see just a progression in there of that quick passing game, of being able to get the ball in your playmakers' hands. Let your playmakers, do their thing. Jimmy G is one of the most physically limited quarterbacks ever, and he understood that and said, "I'm just going to get the ball to my playmakers. I'm going to get it into Brandon Ayuk's hands. I'm going to get it to Deebo Samuel's hands. Almost throw a pick, but he's going to run for 80 yards. Trey Lance, let Deebo Samuel run for 80 yards and get you a touchdown. You don't have to throw it 60."
The check downs, man. Check downs and get downs. I want them to check the ball down. I want them to slide. I want them to not take hits. But again, we don't see that till week 1. That's just kind of the way it goes. Now, just real quick, we got a lot more questions to get to before we jump out of here. I do want to give an update. My draft book, the version 1, will be coming out this Saturday for all Patreon subscribers. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, any tier, then you are going to be getting that. All you have to do is just type in Patreon and 49ers. Thankfully, we're the first one that pulls up. And you got a 7-week free trial that we set up on there. So go check it out. I'm going to have that up. That's version 1. We'll do a final one once we get to closer to the draft, but we're at 147 pages, over 300 prospect write-ups, comps, everything that you need. We got you covered. And 49ers focus and tilt on those things. So we've been working really, really hard behind the scenes. A lot of people have been helping with that. So I'm excited about that. Now, couple questions I want to get to. I feel like, let's just touch base on this quickly. David asks, is there any chance we kick the tires on Lamar? Let me just say this. To get the Lamar deal done, you have to have 2 first-round picks, and they have to be higher than your original draft position or at the same. We don't have that pick. We can't even get into the sweepstakes of offering Lamar a deal. To further complicate things, let's say we traded whatever and got another first-round pick this year, and we wanted to make an offer to him. Let's say we're going to make, $45 million a year guaranteed, 5 years, whatever. I don't even care. The problem that complicates that further is the Ravens have a 5-day period to match or not match. Well, guess what? Free agency starts in 5 days. So you would have to acquire that first-round pick first. Then you would have to make a qualifying offer second. Then you would have to wait 5 days for the Ravens to say, no, we'll take him. Then you're screwed because you can't spend any of that damn money during free agency. That's why I keep saying there's just too many damn hurdles for a practical approach. This isn't Madden. Johnny, am I crazy? Please tell me I'm crazy.
You are not crazy. Thank you. Thank you for that, because that is exactly where I've been, is that it's just not realistic. The amount of capital you have to give and the amount of capital you have to give up just to get into the conversation isn't worth it. I mean, are you really going to give up a guy that you're going to get a high first-round pick for? Understand who we're talking about. We're talking like a George Kittle, a Christian McCaffrey, maybe. He would even be hard because we gave up what was equal to like a late second for him, or a late first. Sorry, excuse me. You're looking at a Deebo Samuel. You're looking at a Trent Williams. Are you really going to trade one of these guys away just to start the conversation? That is too high of a price just to start the conversation. I think it's absolutely unrealistic to see Lamar here at all.
Yeah, and not now. If you want to do the conversation of, man, would it be better to have Lamar than Bosa? And like, those are fun conversations. That's a wonderful thing, and I love stuff like that. That's what we used to do as kids all the time, right? Like, that's beautiful. However, logistically, it just does not work. It just does not work, sadly. Doesn't mean I don't want Lamar or whatever else. It's just logically doesn't work. And yes, Lamar can turn down everything. He's got the exclusive franchise tag. He could just play on that. I think it's 34 million guaranteed if he signs that. My guess is this is going to carry on. So anyway, take that for, whatever it is you want to do with. Now, I do want to say shout out to my man, Troy. He says, day 13 in the hospital. Thank you for the entertainment. Troy is awesome. He came out and partied with us in Denver. Absolute one of the best people. He's just awesome. Troy, get better, man. We love you, bro. And look at this comment, Joe. I love Joe. He says, when I first started following the draft, it had 17 rounds. Let me ask you this, Johnny. Would you prefer a 10-round draft or kind of what we have now?
I'd prefer what we have now. I don't want to see the NFL stretch it. The NFL would turn it into a 6-day thing. All right. And I'm wore out by day 2. I'm like, all right, it took us 18 hours to get through round 1.
It's a lot.
And in some ways, I mean, I get it. It's what allows contracts to get bigger. It's what allows the game to grow sometimes. Just sometimes I get a little tired of the NFL feeling like they're trying to wring every last penny out of every last event that they have. And that would just feel like a money grab.
I'm with you there. And shout out to the man, the myth, the legend here, Jason Hurley, who crushes it. He says, thank you, John and Johnny. Been saying online, Lamar isn't feasible cap-wise or draft pick-wise. Again, not shots on Lamar, not shots on if the 49ers would be better. Just, again, I go back to this. I would really like to date Scarlett Johansson. That's not up to me. It's not up to me. It's not up to me. And I don't think my wife would be okay with that. So that's
probably
just out of the way it goes. But, it's what it is. So, man, Johnny, I just want to say thank you for your time. This has been an absolute blast. Looking forward to more. And again, the very first line in the description of this video or audio or podcast or whatever you downloaded, just go click on it. 1, support people. If you're one of those people that's sitting there saying and you're screaming into your phone right now, I just don't like YouTube. That's okay. Guess what? This is a free way to support content creators. All you got to do is just click on that link, hit subscribe. And if you're not a YouTube person, guess what? That's okay. You just help Johnny out and build the community. So anyway, I'll throw that out there. Johnny, any closing thoughts or remarks before we say goodbye to all these crazy people?
Man, strap in, y'all. It's do you think Niner Twitter gets crazy? It's I think you're gonna see some people lose their minds when they see what Jimmy Garoppolo gets.
Over or under 30 million per year?
Over.
I think so too.
Yeah. I mean, if you're the Panthers, if you're the Raiders, you know that you're a Jimmy G away from the playoffs. You're not going after that. D'Amico,
I do not want him to go to the Raiders. I don't either. The Raiders. Devontae Adams is one of my favorite players of all time, and I think he's one of the best deep ball receivers ever. And so to pair that up with Jimmy Garoppolo bothers me. And I love Jimmy, but it's like you got the best deep ball wide receiver, and you're going to get somebody that refuses. Now, would they win more games than they did with Derek Carr? Sure, they would. I think they would. And not saying that Jimmy's better than Derek Carr. I think they're equivalent, but they just have different skill sets.
Right.
Man, that would bother me. I want to see the deep ball. Also, I own Devontae Adams in my fantasy dynasty league, so there's that. I will throw that out there.
I'm interested in the pairing and seeing what Jimmy would do back in an Earhart Perkins offense with McDaniels out there. Having spent all of his at the beginning of his career with him. It just is an interesting thing. Team that runs the ball well, plays good defense for the most part.
For the most part.
But and what does Jimmy G does Jimmy G push the ball down the field a little bit more with a Devontae Adams? I don't know. Maybe
I would.
I mean,
I don't Puerto Rico that thing, man.
We saw what Jarrett Stidham did. He was dropping 50-yard bombs, just letting Devontae Adams go get it. So I think Jimmy's going to get a market, and I think a bunch of people who were less than kind to me when I said he'd get more money than he got with us. And I think they're going to be finding that market is very real. So but on top of that, then you're going to see free agents leave, and you're going to be surprised that the 49ers do not bring in what you see as a splash to replace those, like at right tackle. I don't see us doing a splash at tackle to replace McGlinchey. I don't see us doing a splash at safety to replace Gibson, or it's going to be one of those. You're going to see a lot of vanilla from the 49ers, and I think you're going to see 49ers Twitter lose their mind.
It's my favorite flavor. It's my favorite flavor.
I'm all about that vanilla latte, man. Like when I go to the coffee shop, it's a vanilla latte, and that's how it is, man. It's the best way to go.
Ah, awesome, man. What a great show, man. I appreciate you educating me and being the bad guy on all those trades. And so direct all hate mail to Johnny Dell's Football Academy. Anyway, no, don't do that. Don't do that. He's the best. So, Johnny, thank you for your time. Everybody else, I really appreciate you. And until next time, that's going to do it for us here. Till that time, stay strong, faithful.
Time for the 49ers Rush Podcast.